A very pleasant good morning and welcome to Apnu+Afc TV for this morning, Thursday, the 18th of June. Those persons in the diaspora, those persons in the region of the Guyanese right here looking at Apnu+Afc TV. My name is Randolph Critchlow. Please remember to share the stream. We're live on Facebook and on YouTube. Do stay tuned and enjoy this morning's program. Welcome.
Hi, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, in Guyana and across the diaspora. The press statement today is headed, "The GCOM CEO must declare only valid votes." On Tuesday, the chairperson of the Guyana Elections Commission, Justice retired Claudette Singh, gave her decision on the Chief Elections Officer report concerning the national recount process of ballots that were cast at the March 2nd elections in Guyana. In her two-page decision, the chairman concluded, and I quote, "In light of the foregoing and in keeping with Order 60 of 2020 and its addendum dated the 29th of May 2020, I hereby request the Chief Elections Officer to prepare and submit to the Commission a report to ascertain the results of the elections under Section 96 of the Representation of the People's Act, Chapter 103. Later in the afternoon, the chairman wrote the CEO in these terms, and I quote, "Pursuant to Article 177(2)(b) of the Constitution and Section 96 of the Representation of the People's Act, Chapter 103, you are hereby requested to prepare and submit your report by 1300 hours on 18th of June 2020, using the results of the recount for consideration by the Commission." During the recount process, it will be recalled that the Partnership for National Unity and the Alliance for Change provided cogent and irrefutable evidence of electoral fraud perpetrated by the People's Progressive Party before and during the 2020 general and regional elections. Let me remind you of some of those issues which cannot and must not be discounted. 1. Counterfoils on ballots carrying the same number. The discovery of wrong lists in ballot boxes for votes cast at different places. Ballots for one region cast in another region. Dead persons voting. Persons who were not present in Guyana on the 2nd of March voting. We provided all this information to GCOM, asking for them to investigate and pronounce on these issues, which were a part of the electoral body's own records. GCOM investigated and were provided with independent proof of our claim by the Commissioner of Police. We have written more than 25 letters to the Elections Commission on these matters. And these matters are confirmed in the Chief Elections Officer report to the Guyana Elections Commission concerning our contention of fraud, which states, among other things, and I quote, "In respect of the allegation of voter impersonation, responses from the Chief Immigration Officer and review of the General Registrar's Office deceased reports confirmed that these were of substance." And this is from the CEO's report. Further, the CEO stated, and I quote, "Finally, the summation of anomalies and instances of voter impersonation identified clearly does not appear to satisfy the criteria of impartiality, fairness, and compliance with provisions of the Constitution and the Representation of the People's Act, Chapter 103. Consequently, on the basis of the votes counted and the information furnished from the recount, it cannot be ascertained that the results in all the districts meet the standard of fair and credible elections. End of quote. This is from the Chief Elections Officer report to the Commission. My fellow Guyanese, Section 96 of the Representation of the People's Act directs that the Chief Elections Officer shall calculate the number of valid votes of electors which have been cast for each list of candidates, and thereupon shall ascertain the results of the elections. We are saying that the Chief Elections Officer, given his own report to the Commission and the subsequent request of the Chairman, must use only the votes that had all supporting statutory documents in the ballot boxes when they were recounted. These, by law, are the only valid votes in a clearly tainted process. Impure and illegal votes cannot be used to arrive at valid votes and a legal result. As I also said on Tuesday night, GCOM has not made a declaration on the outcome of these elections. We now await the report of the Chief Elections Officer to the Commission and remain optimistic for a favorable outcome to this process for the good of all Guyanese. We continue to urge restraint by all Guyanese, be they our supporters or any other party supporters. We ask that you exercise restraint as we await the declaration by the Chairman of the Elections Commission. I thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much for staying tuned to APNU-FC TV on this Thursday morning. It is slightly overcast outside. For those persons who are traversing our roads, we of course implore you to be safe as you continue to do your business. Today is the 18th of June, it's a Thursday. As you may have heard, the CEO is supposed to submit his final report as directed by Madam Chairperson, his final report on the recount. That report is expected to be in by 1 p.m. today, 18th of June 2020. As stated, using the results of the recount in accordance with Article 96 of the Representation of the People Act. You just listened there to Mr. Harmon speaking on the party's position, the APNU-FC's position on that report that is expected by Mr. Lowenfield. And let me just go through some of the things that he would have highlighted so that we understand where we are and what is expected today. As he would have stated, we are saying that the Chief Elections Officer, given his report to the Commission and the subsequent request of the Chairman, must use the votes that all have the supporting statutory documents. Given that Article 96 of the Representation of the People Act says that the Chief Elections Officer, let me read it for you. Let me read that so we are very clear on what the CEO is supposed to be doing today. The Chief Elections Officer shall calculate the total number of votes, total number of valid votes of electors which have been cast for each of the candidates, and thereupon shall ascertain the results of the elections in accordance with Section 97 and 98, the total amount of valid votes. And we have maintained from the beginning that this is the law, and the CEO must not go against the law. We have quoted the CEO's initial report. The CEO's initial reports in his own words. In his own words, and let me just go that over for you as stated by Mr. Harmon just now. our position is very clear. The CEO would have submitted his report on the national recount. In his report, and I quote, it says, in respect of the allegation of voter impersonation, responses from the Chief Immigration Officer and review of the General Registrar Office deceased reports confirms that these were substance further to be investigated. And what the CEO is basically saying here is that those allegations were not allegations, are not allegations anymore. They were confirmed by the pre-investigation, the information gathered from the registrar office and the immigration office proved that votes were cast for persons who were out of the jurisdiction, votes were cast for persons who were deceased. Finally, the summary of the anomalies and instance of voter impersonation identified clearly that it does not appear to satisfy the criteria of impartiality and fairness. Right? That is from the CEO's report. That is from the CEO's report. And he goes on to say that I cannot ascertain that the results of all the districts meet the standards of fairness, fair and credible election. The standard of fair and credible elections. So we have provided irrefutable evidence throughout the recount process of fraudulent activities perpetuated on the March 2nd regional and general elections. We have presented this evidence to GCOM. They have done some investigation, as the chairperson said that GCOM is not in a position, given the article they're using of the Constitution, to investigate further. But we maintain that only valid votes should be tabulated in coming to a conclusion as to the winner of the March 2nd regional and general elections. And that is what we maintain. As you would have listened there to Mr. Harmon, making the case that valid votes are those votes that can be verified using the statutory documents. The reality of going into boxes. And this is where we are at this point in time. Today is Thursday. We are waiting that final report on the CU. But we would have said from the beginning that if we're going to go into the boxes, it cannot be just a numerical count. You can't just go and count votes. Opening the ballot boxes, which are supposed to have those statutory documents, would mean that you have a responsibility. You have a responsibility to ensure that the accompanying documents are there so you can verify everything in the box. And that is what the recount order speaks to. The recount order speaks to all of those things that you have to audit, basically, when you go into those boxes, right? And we know of these issues. For the last 35 days, we have been going over all of the issues that were highlighted when those boxes were open. Counterfoils and ballots carrying the same number, the discovery of wrong lists in ballot boxes, ballots for one region cast in another region, votes being cast for persons who were dead. These are all things that we saw when we opened up the boxes. Persons who were not present in Guyana, a vote cast for them. And of course, what we saw on the Low East Coast, a total of 47 boxes with absolutely no statutory documents in them. None at all. So there was no way of verifying whether the votes in those boxes were legally cast, whether they were cast by persons who were supposed to vote in our elections. So as it stands, these are just, overwhelming evidence at this point in time of electoral fraud that happened on March 2nd. And at the end of the day, we have maintained from the beginning that these things that were documented in the observation reports, they have to be considered when GCOM is going to make a declaration, as they will do very soon, today, of course, is that day when the CEO will present his report. His report, of course, will be used by the chairperson, Madam Justice Claudette Singh, to make a pronouncement on the election, and that should happen today. So, as we would have been doing over the past month and a half, we are asking persons to continue to be patient. We're asking persons to continue to hold the line, as we say, continue to be calm, and don't be pulled into any chaos, because at the end of the day, as the president would have highlighted, we have put our faith in GCOM, we've put our faith in the system, we've put our faith in the process and allowing that process to finish. We are nearing the end of that process. Today will be a very significant day in the history of our country as we wait that final report from Mr. Keith Lowenfield. So I think we have another video of Mr. Harmon taking some questions. We'll go to that video quickly as we continue to bring you information this morning on what is expected to happen at 1 p.m. today as Mr. Lowenfield presents his report. So we'll take Mr. Harmon as he did those question and answer, and we'll be right back.
Mr. Harmon, Travis Chase, Nightly News. I just have 3 questions, and that'll be it for you. I hear you when you made the pronouncement that the CEO is supposed to declare the elections on valid votes cast.
Yes.
You read the letter from the chairman of the Guy Elections Commission to the CEO with specific instructions.
Yes.
You expect him to disobey the CEO?
I expect that the CEO will follow the law and the Constitution. That is what we expect. That is the least that we can expect of a constitutional officer, that they will follow what the Constitution and the law says. And so this is what we expect the CEO to do with respect to the report which he will submit.
Secondly, you said that when you discovered these anomalies, these irregularities, at the initial stage you had written to the CEO or the chairman of the Elections Commission?
Well, we wrote to the chairman of the Elections Commission, and a copy to the CEO. There were over 25 letters, my friend, and they ranged on a variety of issues. In large measure, those letters, we did not receive a response to them. But I feel confident, looking at the CEO's report, that there was some investigation into these statements which we made, because recall that these were from the Commission's own records. And so we were following up matters which occurred at the counting desk, at the desk by the agents, and that were part of the Commission's own records. And so I'm satisfied that the CEO in his report has treated with those issues that we did raise. And the sense I get is that there was an investigation into them. But I don't believe that the Commission itself actually followed up by responding to us to say, we have received your letter and this is the action that we have taken.
Thank you, sir. And finally, the last time I spoke with you, you told me that the People's Progressive Party has embarked on this psychological drama of its supporters. Today we see billboards up in the streets. Congratulations, President-elect Dorfman Ali. We see celebrations that were up street in all parts of this country. What is your message now?
As I said, I urge restraint by all parties. Some of these things, they have a way of creating a response from persons who are incensed or angry by these things which are put in your face. And I say this to the People's Progressive Party as well, that they have to understand that the chairman of the Elections Commission has not declared. She has not declared. And therefore, as I said sometime before, these are premature activities, premature celebrations. And sometimes what they tend to do is to take their supporters down a particular road so that in the event that something happens which do not conform to their expectations, then there is a problem. So I'm saying that these things are provocative in nature and content, and that they should desist from doing so. People all across the region, in the diaspora, in the Caribbean and so on, they are looking at what is happening. Very often people try to put the blame on our supporters. But the world has seen that we have maintained calm from the time of these elections, and that the party that had anything at all to do with any form of unlawfulness, let me put it that way, was the People's Progressive Party. On the 6th of March, we have prepared a compendium of incidents, particularly in Region 5. We were not accused of anything like that. But sometimes, you wonder, because of the control which they have of a major part of the media, that sometimes they tend to want to drown out your message, and they carry their own message, and they disregard the constitutional and other rights of Guyanese people. They feel they can trample on it and nothing happens. I spoke about the matter in which the doctor at the Artichon Conference Center was assaulted by ropes and men. And an officer from the DPP's office said that it did not amount to assault because he looked at the video footage, and so it was not assault, even though Ben himself admitted to have actually struck that person. I've spoken about those same incidents in Region 5, where no prosecution has taken place, even though there was injury, hurt, and damage. And so I want to say these things because people tend to always feel, okay, APNUFC supporters are the ones who are involved in these things. We have, by and large, kept our supporters committed to our message that we believe that Guyana is for all of us, that there is no place for violence in this country. But even as we speak to our supporters, that even if you are involved in a protest, it must be a peaceful protest. We are having incidents that are occurring on the other side that are provocative in nature. And I call on all parties to exercise restraint and act within the confines of the law. We are a law-based society. We are a constitutional-based society, and we must act in accordance with our laws and our constitution. I thank you.
Sir, just one question. When the battery next, we see the Organization of American States has issued a statement for there to be a transition of power. What is your response to this? How do you feel about it?
Well, the OAS has been making several statements before. The chairman of the Elections Commission has not made a declaration as to who is the winner, who is the loser. And so any statement to that effect is premature. It's premature. There is no declaration by the Elections Commission. And I say this again, that we have committed to a 4-stage process under this recount process. We've completed 3 stages of it. We still have 1 stage to go. And yet everybody's running out, making all sorts of statements. So what are we saying? We're asking, apart from asking our supporters, asking the Guyanese people, we are also asking the foreign elements, the embassies and all of that, to also exercise some restraint and allow our electoral process to go to its fruition in a peaceful way and in a way that can satisfy all Guyanese that they have had a valid vote count and that their votes were properly counted, and it reflects the will of the Guyanese people at the end of the day. I thank you.
Thank you very much for staying tuned this morning. If you're now joining us, welcome to APNUFC TV. Those persons joining us all over the region and right here in Guyana. You just listened to Mr. Joe Harmon, the campaign co-chair, taking some questions from the media there last night and speaking directly to the national recount process, stating clearly that we're in a 4-stage process and we're at the 3rd stage of that process, and asking and imploring everyone involved to exercise some restraint and some patience and allow the process to conclude peacefully. We have maintained over the last month that we will, the president has said very clearly that he will abide by whatever pronouncement is made by the chair. At the end of the day, we are committed to that process. That should happen very soon. Today is Thursday, the 18th, the day that is set out by the chair for the CEO to present his final report on the recount numbers that is supposed to be in at 1 p.m. today. We'll definitely be on air getting that information to you. As it happens, I'm sure if anything happens before then, we'll be back on air giving you that information. So just to wrap up this morning, as we wait the chair of GCOM to make her pronouncement based on the information provided to her by Mr. Kit Lowenfield, the Chief Elections Officer. We, of course, stated there by Mr. Harmon, expect that the CEO will follow the law. The CEO, by his own account in his initial report, could not ascertain that the information gleaned from the national recount met the criteria for fair and credible elections. And we don't expect that he will move too far from what he stated. As Mr. Hammer said, we expect him to follow the law. We expect him to tabulate those valid votes cast, those votes that have the statutory documents and can be validated, can be verified, can be authenticated. So at 1 p.m. today, that information will be presented to the chair, and then we shall move on as a country as we wait the conclusion of this historic process. As you know, the Guyana would have never gone through a process like this, opening up the ballot boxes in this fashion. We were able to uncover a mountain of fraud after opening up those ballot boxes, and those evidence, those irrebuttable evidence, they were presented to GCOM in those observation reports and the initial investigations through the registrar office and the immigration office, showing clearly that persons who were out of the jurisdiction, persons who were dead, votes were cast for them in the March 2nd election. And of course, on the East Coast area, we had some 47 boxes that none of the votes in them could be validated or verified. That, in addition to a myriad of other issues that were highlighted during the recount process, all put a number of votes in question, and in our view, cannot be deemed as valid votes. So we await that. We ask persons to continue to be patient. We'll be back on air at 12, leading straight into that 1 o'clock submission of the CEO's report. We'll be on air for that when that happens, so you will be informed in real time as the CEO presents his report on today, the 18th of June 2020. My name is Randolph Critchlow. I want to thank you for joining us for this morning update, very quick update on what is happening as we prepare to hear what the CEO has to say. We hope that you have a wonderful and productive morning. Do continue to be safe. Take the precautions necessary to ensure that yourself and your family are safe from COVID-19. Do join us back here at 12 with more information, APNUFC TV. Thank you for staying tuned.